What is processing speed? For most of the students, when we're talking about processing speed, we're talking about the pace at which you can take in information, make sense of it, basically process what you're hearing or seeing, and begin to respond. What slow processing speed looks like is the student who is taking forever to get his homework done, who takes a long time to answer a question. Someone whose reading can be very slow when there's not a reading disability. This is someone that takes time to process multi-step directions. And also, many students with processing speed issues have difficulty with fine motor skills and writing quickly. So this can affect reading, writing, math, and general conversations. It's helpful when you're dealing with a student that has processing speed issue to look at where the disability is impacting them the most. Is it in the input process? Is it a visual processing issue that has to do with how when they look at something, they don't see all the details quickly? So it would be visual attention. And as they take that visual input into their mind, it takes them a while to process it, which would be our second issue, processing what they're seeing. Now, this input can also be on the auditory or sensory level. So there's the input coming from the outside world, and then the processing of that information, whether it's visual, auditory, or sensory. In the main mechanics of it. And then there's the output, whether that's verbal or written with fine motor or movement with what they're going to do. So when you're looking at a child with processing speed issues, the first thing to do is to determine what arena and what arena as far as input, processing, or output, and what sense, visual, auditory, sensory, or motor, that the deficit is occurring in. So let's take a minute and look and consider about verbal processing speed. So with verbal processing speed, you're talking about a student that has a typical vocabulary, but yet has difficulty using that vocabulary in a timely manner. So students with verbal processing speed issues take extra time to understand what you're saying. This is different than an auditory processing issue, because with auditory processing, it's something to do with hearing the sounds. Verbal processing, we're going to whole language. And so we're dealing with vocabulary, sentence, and meaningful concepts. And many students with slow verbal processing are also going to have trouble with executive functioning skills, breaking things down and sequencing them quickly. Many of these students will have word finding issues and will rarely volunteer to answer something in the classroom because they're still processing both the input of the question and trying to create their answer. Executive functioning are some of the best ways to deal with verbal processing speed, using graphic organizers to visually outline ideas, using note-taking techniques when they can get the key ideas of what they're listening to, exercises to sharpen their attention to visual detail, so that they're discerning and getting the vocabulary more quickly and the concepts more quickly so that they can then verbalize it. Visual processing speed is clearly on the visual domain. This is how quickly a child can look at something visual and process it. For visual processing speed, there's no motor component, there's no thinking component. This is not a child that's a slow thinker. They're just slow at processing visual information. Quite a few people that have visual motor processing, the combination of slow motor skills, fine motor, handwriting, use of a pencil, with the slower taking in of visual information. That process of visual motor processing speed makes it very difficult for students in a classroom to quickly take notes or answer questions on a test. And also many students with visual motor processing speed become very frustrated with the written assignments, causing them to dislike writing in general. There are accommodations for visual and visual motor skills. The most common one is allowing extra time on tests. Another one is to provide extra time in the classroom for assignments or outside of the classroom so that they have extra time to turn it in. Really getting students trained in time management so they can see where they are and how much more they have to do can help. Teaching typing skills for these students once they get past third grade so they can become a very quick and efficient typist. And then once they can type, allowing the use of a computer to alleviate this motor component and allow them just to get their ideas out. So basically, with processing speed, one of the best things is to build executive functioning skills so that students can learn to break down, organize their tasks. That reduces the load on their working memory so they can focus more on the content, whether it's verbal or visual, rather than working just on the organization of it. The other skill that we want them to build is flexible thinking, so that if they can't do it one way, they can do it another way. They don't get stuck, which takes a lot of time. When you're stuck and you don't know what to do, it's hard to move on. And finally, accommodations, the first one being more time, especially for the child with the verbal processing speed. They need more time to take in and process information so that they can show their intellect. Another accommodation, especially for the visual motor, is the use of a computer. And then finally, building the executive functioning skills, making a checklist, and breaking down the tasks and following along. So with processing speed, the most important thing is to discover the cause and then create the solution. Thank you.